The new expansion for Hearts of Iron 4 coming soon. Now, Paradox have revealed the new historical Sweden national focus tree. Sweden is here. As standard, military, industrial, and democratic aspects of the Sweden focus tree is in this dev diary. I presume the alt history stuff is going to be another dev diary, and they always leave that for later because that's always the spicy stuff people get the most excited for, like communist Sweden, fascist Sweden, monarchist Sweden. I don't know, a few people in the community get really hyped over that. So the focus tree reflects Sweden's initial unpreparedness for war and sequential focus on military activities. The tree presumes the players will eventually engage in warfare even under the democratic path. However, the AI will adhere to the historical constraints until the player chooses otherwise. So as always, it's historical. However, if a player externally intervenes, then on historical, the AI will eventually join a war. Think about it though, guys. This is a war game. Eventually, even under the historical path, you're playing as Sweden, you're eventually going to join a faction and join a war. And being as democratic, it'll more than likely join the Allies. The big dilemma for Sweden is they have built up large support for neutrality and thinking internally and building up their welfare state. This increases their stability massively, but it removes a massive amount of war support. And if you want to go to war, you need war support, right? So it's a matter of, do you want to trade off some of the funding for the welfare state, for the military, losing your stability, getting you war support? It is kind of a push-pull. It is a classic balance of power using stability and war support, which other countries have taken advantage of. Let's have a look. So Sweden has like proportional voting, many coalitions, and because of that, you tend to find at the very beginning of the game there's going to be leaders changing left, right, and center. And I believe this is the leader you start with. Support in the party in power, meaning political power is going to cost a lot more. War support, slight component of, as well as cheaper guns by a very small margin. And then after a vote of no confidence, you have the fallen Riksdag, which results in you losing political power. You are now ruled by a room full of chairs. Nice. And then we have this gentleman, a minor opposition party in power, losing a little bit of political power, but he is also a rearmament component as well. Is it my imagination, or does this guy look stereotypically Sweden? I close my eyes and I see this guy's face when I think Sweden. Next up, we have the historical guy. This is the guy you start with in Sweden in the current game. Solidified mandate, stability, cheaper political power costs, but overall he's reluctant to join the actual war itself. And then you've got his successor, which is a captain of industry, and so that means you can hire a captain of industry, and also the leader is a captain of industry, meaning you get a double bonus, which is also kind of cool. It's just a little bit of a mix of the normal game mechanics. Next up, we have the next subcategory, hunger and folk. Hunger Shield refers to Sweden's experiences during the First World War and Second World War, where embargoes on fear of food shortages influence domestic policies. Stability acts as a shield against hunger strikes in the game, while low stability can lead to riots. Folkshemmet represents Sweden's social democracy policies and a focus on the welfare state, limiting military spending. So once again, kind of a balance of power, but not actually a balance of power, of stability versus war support. And if stability, I presume, goes too low, you have an issue where you could lead to riots. Something that only usually happens at war, but you can have it at peace in Sweden. Damn Swedish people with their rights and stuff. Craziness. And here we go. So your risk of getting unrest if stability is below this certain threshold. And as you can see, it's basically a balancing act. Do you want to support the war, but then you've got the risk of internal problems? Or do you want to fix your internal problems and remain neutral? That is the decision you've got to make as Sweden. Look at this one. Countrywide riots. Production efficiency growth minus 125%. How do you reduce it by more than 100%? Oh, that means it's ticking down. So that means production efficiency decline, meaning you'd be losing efficiency on production. Whoa, that's a bit different. And here we have the Folkshemmet. I'll say it different every time I say it, and which results in a massive amount of stability, massive reduction in war support though, and a big boost to the economy and a penalty to construction and military industry. My guess is this is what you start on, and it's a matter of trying to mitigate some of those penalties to take advantage of participating in the war. As long as the welfare state is intact, it acts as a buffer against the risk of getting strikes. So it's a matter of like slowly working your way well from the welfare state to contribute more to the military. And as historically we know, I think there was some level of rearmament, but for the most part, they stayed neutral. So the welfare state was mainly intact. And as you can see, you can go in the opposite direction where you lose some stability, not a massive amount, but you gain the war support and then you swing in the other direction. This is good. Well done, Paradox. If you offer the player something, make them make a sacrifice for making that said decision, and therefore make them think about the strategy they're actually aiming for. Stability is good, mostly in the early days, because you're building up your consumer industry and you're trying to reduce your consumer goods, and it also results in overall production output. Overall, though, kind of late game, stability kind of falls off. You want to stay above 50%, particularly at war, just to avoid those bad events. But overall, it doesn't play as big a part as it does in the early game. The player can feel okay with losing some level of stability late game, but of course focusing on that big military buildup as the game progresses. The industrial branch. What do we have here? The Defense Act, urbanization, poverty reduction above all else. So it kind of looks to me like you're double downing on the welfare state for the left path, but on the right side you're moving away from it and focusing on industry for the war. I'd take a guess this path on the left is the historical path. Oh, I could be wrong about this one. So this path here, this accept the agreement, this part, eats more consumer goods, but you gain more stability whilst at war. It gives a boost for other ideologies. You reject the agreement. I'll not be pronouncing any Swedish words. I can't say Dankus's name, so I'm not going to try and pronounce some of these names, which once again moves slightly more towards war support. It does seem to me that stability is going to be 100% at the very start of the game, as it is as Sweden currently, and everything is about chipping away at stability to give you rewards for your war. Oh, but there we go. Reduced poverty is actually moving more towards neutrality. And then defense above all moves in the opposite direction, as expected. This final one's kind of interesting because this removes the welfare state, which increases consumer goods and hurts stability. Okay, that's not what I thought that would happen. I would presume a welfare state to maintain it would be eating consumer goods, eating the budget. So it's strange that the deregulation eats consumer goods. Set the terms of the trade for the ball bearings for the Soviet Union. The trade of ball bearings, a lucrative trade during the war. So you can see here, it's reducing the cost by most planes and tanks by relatively smaller amounts. You don't usually see reduction of cost of something by less than 5%, but you do see this here, making a big impact for fighters as well as light tanks, but less so everything else. So this initially suggests that your trade is interconnected with the Soviet Unions as well as Britain, as well as Germany. So once again, you're initially playing the balancing act, remaining neutral by equally trading with everyone else. It scares me a little bit because it reminds me of the Switzerland focus tree, but I hope Paradox have learned their lesson. The Swiss focus tree is really, really bad. Every bone in my body wanted to love that focus tree, but I hated it in every single way. And I think I've played Switzerland once now since that new expansion came out. I don't think I'm ever going to go back to it. Flashpoints. So throughout the war, events will happen where you chose to side either towards neutrality, a certain nation or ideology, or just generally supporting the rearmament and war support. As you can see in this case, the Soviet air raid in northern Sweden. Wow, the Soviet Union moving into Swedish airspace, devastating. And you have the choice here to take advantage of that and protest this event by moving more towards war support and losing stability, moving away from neutrality. And as you can see, there's quite a few of these events, but I'm not going to dip into them because these will be kind of more fun to experience actually in game. And this final one gains you a puppet focus war goal against Sweden. The enemy of the Swedes. Why are the Swedish people ruining Sweden? Declare war on them. Interesting. Okay, the military path. So what we got here, as always with the Swedes, a liberal market economy is something they don't generally favor, and it's more about a strong central government and more central planning. So in this case, the military is expanded as its own arm of the government. They've definitely been a step away from the normal art direction, where there's some of these old icons here. Can you see them? They look a little bit dull and not very colorful. Maybe because I've seen them so many times in game. But then some of the newer ones here, like these ones, are a lot more colorful and they pop a lot more. So you can definitely see the newer ones over the older ones. To summarize, the military. All the branches of the focus tree are shared among all paths. These paths don't reward with military factories and more towards giving said bonuses towards the said path, which is a good direction Paradox have chose to take, especially for a well-developed nation like Sweden that can make their own mills, you know? The highlights of the focus tree is it offers a defensive branch as well as a defensive branch. These focuses can scale depending on the amount of resources that you've invested in. Progressing through the focuses requires time and to increase war support, so not all of them will be available initially. You'll need to build your war support to get advantage some of the better ones. The Bofors, known for the 40mm anti-air gun, receives unique traits and funds for the Mayo, which that branch of the Mayo is the Swedish military intelligence. The military branch also modifies the Folkshemmet and provides funds for the Swedish Mayos. My presumption would be, as you're pulling funding wealth from the welfare state, that funding is going into the military. So I presume the bonuses and the penalties you get for the Folkshemmet, am I saying it right? No, I'm not. Will adjust depending on your investment into the military branch. Oh, okay. I was right. Let fly all guns. So this is your special anti-air that you've got for the Swedes. And it looks like it benefits not only the anti-air, the anti-tank, as well as the artillery. Ooh, more soft attack for artillery. Hey, can't argue with that. That's pretty OP. That's pretty OP. As you can see, that offers you funds for the Mayo to improve it as a part of the changes they're making to industrial concerns. And as you can see, here are the bonuses. That is very, very strong. Armor attack, as well as artillery soft attack. Oof. Sweden, very strong. I'm looking at you, Paradox. You're buffing your own nation. Shame on you. And as you can see, the Mayo here for the Bofors gives you extra anti-air attack. Come on, guys, just get it out of the way. Just comment below saying every time he tries to pronounce something, it makes me cringe. Just get it out of the way. Get it out of your system. Get it out into the world. This is therapy for everyone. Next up, the Navy branch. Normally, I not care too much about Navy, but I know Sweden has a big industry and it is a decent sized Navy, so this is something I do kind of care about. Anything that buffs repairs is always a strong thing for Sweden. A lot of the time when you make a big capital ship and it takes a lot of damage, it might spend 3 to 6 months getting repaired. So anything that improves repairs makes a better game experience, so I'm down for that. Purchase Italian destroyers is really interesting. Anything that can make your Navy significantly faster over a short period of time, even by buffing out with lots of cheap ships, I am so for this. One of the biggest concerns in Hoi 4 is if you're a minor nation, you don't have enough time to catch up with the rest of the world with your Navy. The easiest way of building a strong Navy in Hoi 4, if you're not a major power, is just to steal it in peace conferences, which is kind of sad in a way. It's kind of nice that this has the option to gain a few more ships. So I'm all for this. Swedish Navy tree offers 2 main branches, contesting the Baltic directly with capital ships or focusing on submarines and light surface fleet for harassment. The shared part of the focus tree is on expanding the domestic industry output and an option to purchase older ships from other countries. The focus tree includes the Vasa focus. So if you're not familiar with the Vasa, it was an old ship in the 1500s. The Swedes take so much pride in the ship. On its maiden voyage, it sunk, probably like only a few miles from the capital city. Much Swedish patriotism. It is the Swedish military Titanic. The powerful battleship Vasa deploys at 60% completion. Oh, this is so good. And is requiring the player to finish the remaining 40%. Once again, capital ships take too long to build. They make too long to build. As sad as I might say this, but I think they need to go back to the older system where you could invest more naval dockyards onto capital ships so you can make them quicker. Or maybe just limit that for a few ships and not like to do that universally for every single ship you're building. One of the biggest concerns is you just can never get battleships out in time to actually make a worthwhile endeavor. And the Vasa 2 is a battleship that comes pre-built, basically 60% built. And as you can see here, it is. And you can also see here the stats of it, and it's incredibly strong. It's really strong. A 13k production cost battleship. Paradox buffing Swedish focuses and Swedish ships. Sweden, not Sweden to Finland's aid. the Åland question, and Finland's cause is ours. So here's your big decision here, and I presume it's all going to be around about the war. Definitely the Winter War. Players could choose to send volunteers, claim the Åland Islands, or actively participate in the war against USSR. Taking Leningrad can force the Soviet Union to a white peace or face unrest. Sweden and Finland receive an avatar assistance during the war. An avatar assistance? Okay, I'm presuming he's talking about the national spirits to give them a buff so you can actually take on the Soviet Union. It's reflected by this. Major country attack, breakthrough against major countries, extra organization, but only for a short period of time. So the idea is, instead of just providing manpower and equipment to the Finns, you actively join the war, and it will be Sweden and Finland against the Soviet Union. But you've got a very short time period before you can take Leningrad, before they necessarily peace out. And if they refuse to peace out, the Soviet Union will suffer from a horrendous debuff. Oh my God! I kind of want the AI to pick this. So that means I get to dumps to the Soviet Union. Oof. Oof. Sweden's historical neutrality has been modified to try and encourage the player to be involved in the war. Kind of, we're moving a little bit towards ahistorical, but what fun is being neutral, right? We need to be involved in war. It's a war game, okay? Refugees trained as police forces can later aid in liberating Nordic countries. It's to train the sheltered. The Albin bus, the Per Albin bus serves as a mobile headquarters and surrender limit modifier. So this is a state modifier that you can move it to said locations. It seems to reduce fuel consumption. Okay, it seems fairly cheap. Plus 50% surrender limit, resistance target in other states, resistance growth in states. You know what? I can't even understand how this is meant to work. There's plan to run away into the forest in case of invasion. I get it. I get it. So Sweden naturally gets this, which is a massive increase to surrender limit, which basically means you've got to take the entire country, and simultaneously massive penalties for the occupiers. Absolutely devastating modifiers. Oh my God, eye-watering penalties. However, if the state that you place the mobile headquarters in gets taken over, you lose these bonuses. I mean, I've got to hand it to creativity. This is so different, but it is a little bit strange too. It's almost like another one of those Swedish pride moments of like, we're so proud of our sunken ship in Stockholm Harbor and also our bus. I love you, Sweden. Rangers Special Forces conduct sabotage operations. So you can see you've got the option of, I presume, nations that are occupying Sweden have the option now. You can sabotage supply hubs inside of the Swedish core territory. I presume that's what this means. Sweden has access to Rangers, which are special forces to send over undercover troops to sabotage vital infrastructure behind enemy lines. And you can see here, so there are kind of modest bonuses to special forces. It seems like it actively buffs the other Nordic nations as well. The Nordic Defense Council. Here it is. Wow. The option to form the defensive council with other Nordic countries. Choose between a centralized command or decentralized command. Oh, please. I know. I'm guessing. I've not read the rest of this dev diary, but I'm guessing. Please make this like a way of democratically forming Scandinavia. That would be so cool. And growing stronger when more member states choose to actively join it. So I presume you're going to get modest bonuses for every nation that joins, but then there's like a unification of all the states join it, creating, in this case, more overall bonuses. This will centralize the Nordic Defense Army into one cohesive fighting force. And as a result, we are expected to defend every member. Interesting. Every member suffers from these penalties. Okay. And we will decentralize the Nordic Defense Army, and our council members will be more able to defend our borders, gaining quite a juicy bonus. Some of these bonuses not overly beneficial. And here we go. A unified Nordic Defensive Council, which is going to create a really interesting scenario when Germany invades Denmark, doesn't it? Can you hold Denmark as the Nordic Defensive Council? That's gotta be an achievement, right? Late game focuses. Late game focuses cater to post-World War II campaigns. Post-war? Ooh, this is new. Late technologies, special forces rework, and dealing with the Iron Curtain. Special forces rework. So this is the very first time that Paradox have included Cold War focuses. This is massive. The threat of the Iron Curtain. Invest in special forces, specialized military equipment. The line of the North rises. I mean, can you complain about this? I mean, At the end of the day, everyone's asking for more late game material, and this is actually it now. Wow. The Line of the North giving you spicy bonuses, actively letting you compete with the Soviet Union, which is to be expected. What the hell is that? Another source of Swedish pride, I think. The Gripsholm Lion. New advisors, generals, admirals, and Swedish states are introduced, and 3D models are introduced as visual eye candy. Wow, look at all these guys. The Minister of Education, that's a bit different. Minister of Transport, some of these names are new. A family-oriented sociologist. Nice. Encourage women to venture into the scientific arts, gaining you extra research. War against inequality. That's the unspoken war on the internet. Interesting advisor here. Look at the difference he made. So war, stability, plus 10%. Resistance in occupied territory, plus 10%. Hates fascism, against civilian construction. Interesting. Wow, look at these generals. Anyone that really jumps out at me? Not really. Ooh, what have they blurred here? Who is this? Paradox, they're keeping something secret. This is going to be something to do with the alt history path. It's got to be. And he's probably got a trait that you've never seen before, and it's something to do with that unique ideology I'm taking a guess at. Nothing really jumps out here. It's interesting to see 2 cavalry leaders, though. That's a bit different. The admirals and this guy with the hat. Oh, my goodness. Charles de Champs. I love that guy already. What a champion. Literally in the name. New states in Sweden. You can see the north now has been broken up a little bit, and the south is definitely a little more industrialized with more states overall. Tonk. Tonk. Maybe a tonk? Maybe. The resource redistribution. The German reliance on Swedish iron ore is represented by making Germany more reliant on imports. You heard it here. They're nerfing Germany. Overall reduction in iron resources for certain specific countries, mainly France and Germany. And Germany receives additional civilian factories to take into account these losses, so therefore they can trade with Sweden and potentially other nations to take advantage of these extra resources. So here we go, boys. So either a combination of balance or a way of buffing some of the nations that have resources to take advantage of those said resources. Pre-expansion, you can see, look at the amount of steel that Germany's got, and it's lost over half of its steel moving towards this top number. Also losing some of its tungsten. That's significant because, once again, artillery powers Germany, so it's going to be interesting to see a Germany with less tungsten overall. Next up, France. France, massive nerf. France is the nation of steel mostly. 454 steel, reduced to 243. Everything else is practically the same. A little bit less rubber and a little bit less chromium, but who cares about chromium, right? Portugal losing a massive amount of tungsten, but still ends up with a lot of tungsten at the end of the day. And then finally, Sweden. Classic paradox, buffing Sweden, gaining a little bit of oil, a little bit more iron, a significant amount of aluminium. Wow. And losing the vast majority of its chromium and tungsten. Okay, now, I get it. The community is going to be mad about this, but listen to me. Hear me out. I think one of the biggest problems with Hoi 4 is there's too much production, okay? And the too much production results in too many equipment, too many divisions, and potentially late game lag. There is a hidden bonus to this that you're not seeing, and that means there'll be less overall divisions super late game. Less resources, less production, less division, and hopefully, this is a guess. Don't take this seriously. It's a guess that it will result in better mid to late game performance. This is something that the Kaiserreich team acknowledged, and they said that they increased the production cost for infantry equipment, the basic infantry equipment, because they were aware that that would discourage the amount of divisions late game, so therefore improve the overall performance. And apparently, as far as I'm aware, it did actually do that. Tell me in the comments, guys, is this a good change or is this a bad change? It's definitely the biggest change we've seen to Hoi 4 in a very long time. The Swedish focus tree actually excites me. It looks really good. Some of the really quirky stuff, though, like the bus and the Vasa too, is kind of a bit weird, but hey, I'm on board with it. I like a bit of quirky stuff. If you want to see the Danish focus tree and you want to see the Norwegian focus tree, it will be coming up soon. If you want to see the dev diaries for those videos, subscribe and you'll get access to these videos as soon as they are published. I love you. I love you. And if you want more of my content, the YouTube algorithm says you'll like this one here. Give it a click. Click for love. I love you.